What's up, everybody? My name is Brandon McCollum, also known as BMXC, and this is Nice Minds. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Kyle Rucker. He's with Ruck B Music, and I know him in a very interesting way. So, actually, if it weren't for Prince, we wouldn't have met because I actually Prince died on my 31st birthday, and so that was a heavy thing, especially in the music industry. And a year after Prince died, I traditionally do birthday shows. Like, I'll just throw a show and I'll perform. I'll have other people perform and stuff like that. So in 2017, I wanted to do my birthday show a little bit different. And we threw this show. I was like, I feel funny doing my birthday show on the day of Prince's death, when everybody's going to be mourning him. It's a year later. Let's give away all of the money that we make to some sort of charity. Right. And so we were like, well, what would Prince give to? What would he donate to? So we literally Googled, I want to say like Minneapolis music education. So because we knew that Prince was big on education, we knew that Prince was obviously a musician. So we found you, which was Project Footsteps, which was a foundation you started. Yeah. And we ended up doing the show. I was thinking, I'm like, should we hit them up before we give them the money? Or should we just drop it on them? And I was like, let's just surprise and just send the money. We didn't expect, I think we ended up with like $600 that night. Right. And yeah, we didn't even like make an introduction or whatever. We just sent it over PayPal. Yeah. And you hit me up like with an email. I want to say like the next or maybe that day or something like that, and you were just like, wow, thank you. And then we just sparked up friendship from there. Yeah, man. So yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, give us a little background. Like, how'd you get into music? I know you're from Chicago, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, music got into me. I always say to people, it's in the DNA. I can't escape it. I'm obviously Black. I'm an American descendant of slaves. Music is so much to us culturally. So my grandmother instilled music into us more as a communication tool. I could sit in a room with her and hum and hymn and improvise and come up with stuff, but it was how we talked. And so it's really a language. I think I've just been privileged to have the interest in studying it. And so in terms of, music in the beginning, it's just always been a part of my life. I think I was 12 or 11 or so when I really started figuring out the piano. And that was kind of the end for me. That was the beginning of the end, so to speak. Yeah. so I say end because you go from being someone that doesn't create, and then you go to being someone that does, and you kind of end that old person. They're gone forever. Yep. And so it's a birth kind of. So I was sort of born, I think, around that age, but it's been in me my whole life. And the great thing is that music allows me to do so much for the community.
Yeah.
I'm so, I guess, lucky. I hate using that word, but I guess I'm blessed and privileged to have the ability to do things. Providing access to kids in anything means a lot to me because it's what I had. It was like Mr. Robinson was the choir teacher, and he would let me, I could sneak around and touch the piano every now and again. He could have not done that, and I wouldn't be the same person today. He could have been an asswipe and been like, oh, no, or go to class, but he'd be like, oh, here's a D major 7. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yep.
So it's, you just never know. I think sometimes we structure help. I love the story of you all just reaching out because it was like it's unstructured support, which is really the most meaningful stuff. I think people that try to save people, you get into a really interesting fight with God because that's what God's supposed to do.
Right.
But what you're talking about is like, we want to help. This is important to someone that inspired me. You talk about the connection to Prince. Like, that's why a guy like Prince would talk about music and education, so that a guy like you one day would be in a position to say, oh, I want to help someone that's doing that.
Right.
And that's how it's supposed to go. So I haven't really actually thought about how we met in a while, but it's when you said that, it's like, wow, that's really, it's such an organic start and footsteps, among many things I've been a part of creating for young people was just that. It's not just music, but creativity ultimately, and understanding that between the age of about 8 and 14, you're at your most creative place as a human. You don't have the same rules in your brain developed yet. The boundaries aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so you study a guy like Prince, and he'll tell you a lot of those songs were written at a very young age. They just were then produced once the skills came along. But in terms of thought about and created, those are wildest dreams, which shows up in his music, of course. No boundaries, pays no attention to rules. You're not supposed to do that kind of scale right now, but he did it anyway. So it all connects. But I'm glad you mentioned that, and you get something back too. Helping young people, for me, keeps me young.
Did you come up to Minnesota to do Project Footsteps, or how did you end up in Minnesota and doing that?
Well, it's a long story. I was just one of those kids that didn't have much. I actually came to Minnesota as a homeless kid.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I try not to talk. I mean, I'd share it with you on this thing because I think it could be helpful for people, but I came here under some really unfortunate circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And was just very blessed to have music ability, which got me into so much. I did a year at Arlington and St. Paul, so I kind of missed my whole sophomore, junior year, half of junior year, because I was just, figuring life out and obviously creating in that time too. That's all I had, really. And so once I got into school, high school, I put my eyes onto college. I had a conversation with my jazz band coach or whatever it was at the time, and he's just like, yeah, you got something. And I didn't know what that was, and he's like, you should probably go to school. And I was so intimidated because I come from a non-reading music background. I come from soul, feel, just what we do. And there's no explanation. And so I was so intimidated to go to college because I was studying world music. And because I was like, oh, all these people will be, this and that and that. And I remember getting there, and you find some of the most proficient musicians. I mean, people that can really players. But they couldn't come up with anything. That's when I found out my value. They could put something in front of them, they'd play the hell out of it. But if you took it away from them and say, let's just come up with something out of thin air, I did not have the same constraints in my mind. And so it became my biggest value is to be able to just sit down and create something out of thin air. And once I figured out how valuable that is, so that's kind of how I got to Minnesota. And I went to the U of M and studied music, and that was a waste of time. I actually tell a lot of young people nowadays, particularly, like, just study the notes.
Absolutely.
You got 12 of them. There's not that many. Just get to know every one of them, and the rest will unlock itself. And then creativity for me translates. That's the thing of, like, I think Quincy Jones is probably one of my, I don't idolize him, but I study him.
Yep.
And culturally, for me, he's just one of our elders that has paved such a way and left so many little crumbs of knowledge behind. It'd be foolish not to look at him. And, being a creative is beyond being a musician. Quincy Jones is a trumpet player at nature.
Yep.
but he also created the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Right.
So it's like the muscle of creativity, I think, is what I was able to start massaging early. For me, being young and coming to Minnesota under such circumstances, and coming from Chicago, which was predominantly Black community, all
Yep.
Black, to Minnesota, which we're at 13% here, um, was really interesting. Now, then come along an obsessive work ethic, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I've noticed that about you. Yep.
I learned that early too. I'm actually in high school, the last year of high school, Rayford Johnson. W. Rayford Johnson was the jazz band director, and this guy was like, he had a part in his head. He looked like the Loneliest Monk's like teacher. He was like this really jazzy dude, but like super clear. And he would always tell me, like, we used to do, like, he set up events for us, so we travel around as seniors and play at like Festival of Nations, all these things, great experience. And he would always say to me, like, because I want to do all this stuff, like I really want to show off how fast my fingers are, like that's what I work on when I was young, like look at it, look, and
Yep.
he'd always be like, dude, you have to let it come to you. You're trying to grab it. You need to let your hand be a vessel, not chase it, which translated into so many parts of my life, like dating, writing a song. I mean, going after a business deal. It's like that one lesson. And so, like, I always tell people who are into music, what you have that a lot of people don't have is a really good metaphorical bank to deal with. Everything in music is life. Everything in creating is a reflection of life. No life, no creating. No
Yep.
creating, no life. They sort of yin yang. And so it's like once you realize that they're kind of connected in all areas, I think you can then do it for a living.
Yeah.
Before then, it's, you have to kind of commit to the whole thing. And I think, for me, I when I was younger, I had to play really to survive. Like playing was like that got me this opportunity or this thing or closer to my goal. And so everyone does it for different reasons. And so, but being a creative is beyond the notes. That's just where it starts for a lot of people. And I'm kind of lucky to have the interests. But yeah, but coming to Minnesota, that was a traumatic event.
I bet.
Obviously, music was my girlfriend through that.
Yep. Obviously, I don't come from the same background as you, but I have
Mhm.
that relating in the sense that I came to Minnesota from California when I was a kid, and I'm from the hood in California. I mean,
Right,
like
right.
I'm from a very diverse area and stuff like that, and I moved to the suburbs, of Minneapolis. I'm immediately, like, I remember walking into my 3rd grade class in Minnesota and everybody just stopping and looking at me like I was this, like, just
Yeah.
weirdo. And it immediately just, like, shaped every interaction I think I've had in Minnesota since has been
Mm-hmm.
shaped from that, and knowing that, like, I was different and stuff like that. And I think that has actually, now that I really think about it, it's actually been a positive, because it just allowed me to, knowing that I was different, um, gave me that opportunity to do all the things that I've done, I think, with music and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's led into so many different things, and hanging out with like the music kids or like the nerds in school and stuff like that, because I wasn't one of the cool kids and stuff like that. That really just shaped who I am today. So I relate in that aspect of coming to a place like Minnesota where it's a completely different culture.
I'll tell you what, I think coming to Minnesota probably was my biggest advantage because competition here is nil. In Chicago, there's a lot of players. That's something I miss about Chicago. It's like I remember being young and you play for somebody and they say that's whack. Straight up. Minnesota's much different. Chicago, someone tell you like that shit
Yep,
sounds horrible.
it's trash. Yeah,
and as a kid, like I would be at I'd be back a day later and I'd be playing, and then I'd be looking for them to say, okay, that's better. There's something different these days. I'm obviously in artist management as well and artist development as well. And so I tell you, it is a different beast dealing with artist growth and then people understanding what it takes, because it's all connected. Being a creative goes back to day one. Like you talk about, third grade. I mean, like that gave me goosebumps a little bit, because it's like that's where it begins.
Yep.
It is like there's like a line going, everything. Then something happens. It changes trajectory. And that is when the creative is born. They either take that bump in life and it knocks them the hell out and the creative is murdered all in the same moment. Yep. Or the creative has a way of, they like get hit by it and they ride with it. And then the creative is born. So then the railroad tracks are gone in your head. So like you said, so I started approaching everything sort of from this deficit, which is what creatives do. Like, so when I was 16 or 17, I meet someone, I didn't have a home, right? You were dealing with people that talk shit and were treating you like shit. It's right. A real thing. That's a real thing. And so like when I meet someone, I always knew that I had this thing, this like monkey on my back, And so it gave me an extra edge that they didn't know all the time. And people will be wondering about, like, I'll send a song to an artist and she'll be like, God, where'd that come from? And I'm just like, well, I don't know, I just come up with stuff. I don't need to go into that's what you listen to is the way I felt when I was 17, looking at a family eat Christmas dinner at a Chinese restaurant through a window. Like, you don't know how tough that is. Maybe you do, and you never know. But like, that's the beauty in it, is like, it's about allowing. I had that guy tell me, like, dude, you're chasing it. You're chasing these, because I'm doing all this stuff because I want to see people's reactions. Like, honestly, I look at people and be like, and I try to make their whole body move with my fingers, and he'd be like, that's not how you're gonna like exhaust yourself. Like, it's more about understanding what this is all about, big picture. And as soon as I got that message, and he said it to me, unplanned, unintended. I don't even think he knows that it's like my North Star. He has no clue. So that's the beauty in being a creative. He was creative in that moment. I was a stubborn kid. I thought I was Ray Charles already.
Right.
And you couldn't tell me shit because I put in 10 hours a day and and so he had to creatively deal with me. And the way that he metaphorically gave that to me, it worked. And it was how he wrote that lyric. You know what I mean? It was how he sort of went about doing that. So anyway, it's all connected. I love these conversations because I don't often get a chance to slow down and think about what the hell it is that I'm doing.
Same. Yeah. I mean, really, like, because I almost every single conversation that I've had by doing this, I learned something about myself. Like, I didn't really realize until I told you that story of me moving from California to Minnesota, how much that really did shape my creative journey, and with just me being like an outcast. And I never really thought about that. And so these experiences that I've had with this have allowed me to kind of learn that about myself and have these different conversations with people about that stuff. So how did you end up starting Project Footsteps then?
Well, that was rebellion. Project Footsteps was rebellion. That was saying we don't value a certain period of time that a young brain is. Yep. For example, if you are like sweet potatoes, need to be picked before they grow all the way. Otherwise, they taste funny. Same thing with zucchinis. So you got to kind of grab them before they just get way too big. Then they lose.
Mm-hmm.
So young people are the same way. And I would look at the world's issues, and then I would look at a generation that has the least amount of constraints to think outside the box. And I would wonder why the world's issues and that group of people were never in the same room. And so that's what we started to do. Obviously, with a music platform and that kind of ability, we were able to get the movement going fast. It actually started as Project Legos, which was leadership, empowerment, growth, opportunity, sustainability. And then we had the best of luck of all time. I got sued by the Lego company.
Wow.
We had
they actually went after you?
Oh, dude, I was sitting at my office.
Damn.
I was sitting at my office with a guy named Mike Jackson, who's just one of the most brilliant people ever. And we were, sitting there talking about what we're doing. And in comes, FedEx. And they're like, oh, you got to sign for this. I'm like, oh, cool. It must be something really special.
Right.
And you open it up. I mean, I'm like 21 at this time, or 20 or something, really young. And I opened it up. Mind you, all I do at my time at this point is we throw keg parties and artist interactions, like, because I'm in college. I'm at the U of M at this point, and we have benefit shows at the Varsity and 7th Street Room to benefit for Footsteps. And so that's all we're doing. And we're using the funds to go and pay facilitators to go out and literally what we call fuck shit up. Like, go and tell kids how much their principal is making for a salary. Like, your school is horrible. It treats you like shit. You need to know that these people are getting paid $120K to do this. And you're paying. So, like, that's like the big secret we keep away from our kids is how shit really works. They don't know how to really address a district like Minneapolis Public Schools, St. Paul Schools. These districts fail certain groups of kids like it's their job, but those kids don't know the apparatus. They don't know how the budget works. They don't know the school board member. They don't know who to hold accountable. And so they just ride through it. And so we were very rebellious. We didn't make a lot of people happy. Let me tell you that the idea was to create really armies within institutions. So we'd go into a district and we would really get students talking about information that we thought they should be privy to. We would go into certain towns. We would go to a homeless shelter and help the students understand that, like, the budget, this homeless shelter brings in $3 million a year. 75% of that budget is going to staff. Question mark.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's insane. So, and that happens under this nonprofit, do good, blue illusion, but really it's just like money making shams, and the community suffers. And so that's where it began. And we, one of our mission statement elements was we don't want to be around forever. The goal, if you have a mission, if you want to feed homeless kids for the rest of life, then shame on you. At some point we got to deal with this issue, which means we have to deal with ourselves. We have to deal with ourselves in the mirror. Every issue we have in humanity is people looking in the mirror and dealing with themselves. Absolutely. At the root of it.
Yep.
Like, literally, you can't point at any problem we have and put it past someone looking in the mirror and making a decision to be a better person. Yep. That's how problems are solved. And so we figured that, young folks could not only create that energy, but they also can create the solutions. And so we would then fundraise to help them actualize something. If there's a group of kids at a middle school in, Mason City, Iowa, that there's 7 kids in there who are being bullied to the point where they want to kill themselves. They've reported. The staff aren't doing anything. Principals, it's just being swept under the rug. They can call us. we can begin organizing with them. We can show up with a check in hand. We can get events going for them. We can get them press if they need it. I mean, that's what we became. It's the same thing we were doing for entertainers. But we just started taking the same abilities and doing it for groups of young people who needed representation and really management. Ultimately, we would come in and manage the situation and really get them in a position where they can win. And we did that for I think 12 years. Wow. And we got to 130,000 students across the country were mobilized in the movement. And once the movement sort of took hold, there was no need anymore to have an organization. You know, then it's like now it's a part of what kids are doing. We don't have to get up and tell them this every day. I can go back to music. Other people can go back to what they're doing, you know. And so I can also say at that time in my life, I was looking for something more than what I was doing. I hadn't quite understood how to get the humanitarian piece out of music yet. And so I felt this need because of the energy, and, you know, people say to me all the time, oh God, you're so talented and such a brilliant, you know, entrepreneur. You can just, and so I was like, yeah, that doesn't matter if I can't help anybody.
Right.
And so I was kind of down on myself. I mean, it was a bit of, you think people who are accomplishing their goals are always happy on the back end. And ultimately, you know, at that time of my life, I was battling, you know, the gods of feeling good about yourself every day or not.
Yep.
And being around, something just drove me toward supporting young people. And once I got into it, what I got out of it in terms of relationships with them, energy from them, youthfulness, it just healed me. And so I'm forever in debt to helping young generations. Like I personally I am. Like, I know that if I don't do it when I sit down to write a song for a client, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I feel that sort of stress. Like, I can't even explain it to you. Like, I have nightmares about not being able to create.
Yeah.
And part of that is like, am I doing as much as I can for the community around me? And if you do all those things, then it is a wonderful life being a creative. But it comes with that. You cannot be a creative and not do at least half time for your community. Doesn't work. Yep. You know, artists that we have here and we manage, that's one thing we get them into right away. How are you sharing this gift? Because if you share this gift, and guess what? You get more gift.
Yep.
And I also get more gift because you're helping me develop a young artist. But you know, that's how it works. But you know, I also have some very harsh critiques of at least the music industry within the creative realm, because I'm in so many lanes of it. But I have some harsh critiques, and I'm more of, I'll just try to fix it as opposed to criticize. And so I'm working on some things now to try to reclaim what hip hop can do for things like youth violence we're experiencing in the Twin Cities, which is up 530% between our Black 14 and 21-year-olds. You know, the NBA YoungBoy put out a song that pretty much says, you're not a man until you kill. Fuck all that fighting stuff. Like, you got to kill now.
That's so crazy.
Kids are like, when I was 16, we just fought. Shit. People get up, walk away. Now, and you can't say to a kid now, like, don't fight. That's stupid. People fight. You can't. But you can. The value of life is different, and so, like, I don't know. There's a lot I could say about, but in summary, like all things that I think my culture has used to advance, they just get hijacked and derailed. Our music has always been a way of communicating progress and strategy, how to love each other, how to forgive each other, how two men can love each other in harmony, how to treat women, how to treat community, why knowledge is good. That's what we were getting fed from our entertainers and our artists up until about 1975. And then at that point, the business value of Black music, the commercial side of it, you know, Berry Gordy did what he did with Motown to retain that, while that our music commercial vultures were, okay, look at how much money this is making. We need to put these artists in commercial, which means once you go commercial, Nina Simone, James Brown, so on and so forth, you can no longer make music that helps your people.
Yep.
You know,
that was a big thing with Marvin Gaye, right? I mean, like Marvin Gaye, there was a whole record that came out a couple of years ago, right? That his record company wouldn't let him put out because it was too political, right?
Well, they say political because that's their way of making
right.
All it was messaging to us about how we should.
That's what I mean. Yep.
Yeah. And so it's so I have a very harsh critique of where we are. You know, like music to me is like, and I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. Music to me was given to me. I cannot explain to you why I can sit at a piano and come up with. I could turn around and play for you right now.
Yep.
And just write something. I cannot explain it. There is no explanation. I have found that it occurs more in folks that look like me than not, you know, and so it's given and it can be taken. And I always tell my own people, because it's there for consumption. I love it when it's used, and I take all kinds of elements. You know, I love Latin music, which you will find show up in a lot of things I produce. And you know, I've had some Latin folks be like, dude, leave my shit alone. Like that's how we do, you know, seriously, I'm not kidding, like seriously. And I've had to be like, yeah, you're right. And so I've had to really, you know, as much as I safeguard that, I had to understand where that's safeguarded elsewhere. But I think for us, we've just lost it. Hip hop became a coalition. That was why it had to be dismantled and you know, sort of repiloted. It still exists, but has a different pilot that's taken it somewhere else. And because you got on board. If you didn't get on board, they wouldn't have gave a shit. So because we had white kids all over the world listening to the lyrics, understanding that there's a layer in between reality and illusion, understanding what is really happening, and they couldn't have that shit. You know, so it became an operation. It's a CIA operation to bust up hip hop.
Yep.
I think people have to recognize that. I know it because I had to live through it. People that I studied music from lived through it. The guys in my neighborhood that were successful in hip hop lived through it. And so I just saw it and grew up seeing the receipt or the residue of how they busted it up. And so we haven't recovered at all. And, you know, guys like Prince and other folks, Michael Jackson even, talked about that, how important it is for us to get back to owning our music.
Absolutely.
And owning it so that we can put it out without it having to go through a commercial filter. I say that out of one side of my mouth. Meanwhile, I commercially publish music. So it's an interesting battle. You know, but yeah, when we had millions, and it started as a 10,000 here, 25,000 in Chicago, West Coast was where the hotbed was for people that weren't black, hopping into hip hop strong. I mean, it became a united voice that
Yep.
had so many different faces. That's too strong. They had to destroy that. I mean, imagine.
Right.
That's like, whoa. We can't, nope. I don't want a kid sitting at my suburban dinner table asking me questions I don't want to confront.
Yep.
But that kid wants to confront him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It's like, I know what people making hip hop was doing. They were trying to make sure that another generation of white men had knowledge.
Right.
Because once you know, you know.
Right.
And you won't turn back to being unaware of the truth
Exactly.
about that's the history. This is the stuff that I fight tooth and nail for districts like Minneapolis and St. Paul, even IPR, etc.,
Yep.
to teach, because it is so important that people understand these kinds of things. But hip hop is, we're doing some things locally. I don't want to get into them now because I've got some non-disclosure sign, but it's a pretty big deal. Obviously, I'll let you know about it as it blossoms. But we're trying to get that back, and we're trying to figure out locally how to use music to interrupt music and artist influence to interrupt what cliff our kids are standing at now, which is not a good one. And we have to play some music over here to get them to be like, wait a minute, let's go over here.
Yep.
We don't have to do this anymore, because it's terrible. But hip hop is responsible for, music is responsible for that.
Yeah.
And creatives are responsible for that. And so I just budge in. This is my thing. Like, the
Right.
city of Minneapolis is working on youth violence. Fuck it. I budge into the room and say, you cannot work on youth violence if you're going to forget the number one cultural vehicle of communication, which is music.
You brought up an interesting point in that. I mean, I think that's why I was able to really grow up empathizing with the black struggle. I mean, because I obviously I didn't go through it, but I mean, I listened to Tupac from the time I was 11. I listened to Snoop and Dre when they dropped, when I was in California, when I was 7 years old, and
Right.
and obviously the Rodney King, the LA riots, I was there when that was going on.
Right.
And
Right.
I was lucky enough to have a mother that would, tell me about what was going on and like why it was happening and stuff like that. But I would
Right.
really listen to these albums, and I would start to really understand, and I just grew up not trusting police, and I didn't really realize, I guess, how much it really, really did shape me and help me understand the things that I understand now.
I wasn't into Tupac's music. I appreciate him as one of the best vessels of communication we've ever had on this earth. A guy like that, I think what made him what enamored people with him is that you can tell that he, at a very young age, embraced this invisible journey he knew he was on to bridge certain connections, and that his role, and to grasp your role and to live it in full purpose, it's special. So beyond his music, listening to you say that, it's like that's ultimately what it's all about. I mean,
Yep.
it is that, you and I know that how much you love and appreciate hip hop beyond the surface. I mean, you're one of the few people that I would endorse as, here's someone who appreciates hip hop beyond the sexiness of it.
Right.
Like, here is someone that, whether they know all the history or not, they have connected emotionally to that well, and they drink that water. We've shared water from that same well, and that's a special thing And those wells don't exist much. We have to go back now and listen to stuff to remember what it was like to be
Right.
different people, but standing at the same spot of water and drinking it together. And, you know, I've had many friends that aren't Black that I've been able to sit down and talk about certain lyrics or this theme of a song or whatever. And we're drinking that water together. And we're both, it's fixing different parts of both of us. Like I might be
Yep.
thirsty for different reasons. He's thirsty for this. So like listening to you say that, that's really great. We got to have these conversations more, not just you and I, but people in general, because
I agree.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's
Don.
important.
Like
It's important.
literally. Yeah.
And especially with what you were talking about with what you want to do with the youth. I mean, I think about just, I think about my own journey with music and how I had Tupac and people like that teaching me, but you're talking about how you've worked with students and you talked about systemic problems with them and how they understand the inner workings of school districts and all that stuff. So and all the different problems that they face financially and all that stuff. So yeah, man, I think it's very important to have those conversations with young people and to
Yeah.
expose young people to knowledge like that.
Yeah. What other choice do we have?
Right. What do you see as Ruck B Music going forward? Like, what kind of struggles have you dealt with in 2020?
Well, let me say this first. So Ruck B Music is one area, because Ruck B Media and Productions is really the holding company. Underneath there, we have different things. Ruck B Music is really what we do on our music side of things, which is where you really know me. We also have advertising and marketing, where we have Minnesota State Fair as a client, Twin Cities Pride as a client. These are folks that we do advertising, obviously music and creativity. We do publishing, which is obviously the same process as like real estate, but just with music. We do artist management. We just have general creative solutions. So if someone is starting a new business and they want to get themselves at this festival, we get hired to make that happen. It's a creative sort of consortium. Now, Ruck B Music is where it began.
Mm-hmm.
That's the epicenter of it. But this year, I mean, this will sound crazy, and people may be like this, or they may be like, "Fuck you, man." But this year has probably been the best year for me as a businessman and entrepreneur
Same.
I have ever experienced in my
Same.
life.
Yep.
I'm in business with companies that have gone out of business.
Yep.
I own 3 music festivals, all 2 in Wisconsin and 1 in with First Avenue, and we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think, I mean, what's been refreshing is humanity is circling back to the basics, which is where creatives thrive the most. Okay, like we're circling back, and that's what we do. Honestly, like straight up, like I this past, what is it, January? So like December, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop snacking, and like so I do pretty good with it, and then I will have a week where I just snack.
Mm-hmm.
And then on that Monday, I'm like, oh, I don't feel well. My stomach hurts. And then I whip it back in shape. And
Right.
that's what we do. Everyone does. And so, like, that's what's happening now. There's a bigger picture. Screw this, that, red, blue, There's a way bigger picture. And if you're a true creative, then you understand that there is a layer in between humanity and spirituality, and that's where creativity is.
Yep.
And we bounce in between spirituality and then we go back to humanity, where we don't want to be spiritual, we want to not be, and then we bounce back and bounce back. And along that journey, as creatives, our job is to make that easy and understandable. People bounce to and from feeling a certain way all day long. What music or a piece of art or a really funny commercial or a cool TV show or a great movie, whatever, what those things do for the human is it helps them get over that little thing. It's like we're constantly going back and forth in terms of living in purpose, living out of purpose, living in purpose, living out of purpose.
Absolutely.
Living in purpose is healthy and we feel good. Being out of purpose sucks. And art and creativity is in between that. So the responsibility is deep. 2020, it has just been clear as day how much we need to get back to the basics in terms of what we're creating for people to consume. Absolutely. We no longer need to bullshit. Like, people now want real stuff.
Yep.
Like I remember a year ago, I remember sitting with an artist who was very frustrated with me because I was trying to, say we should do this with the music. But I was agreeing with them that we need to be more human with it. We need to, and not human in terms of what you hear, but like in terms of what it does for people.
Right.
And I said, no, I get it, but I can't sell that right now. And I brought that person through the reality. I said, right now I have these corporate partners around. And so give me something I can run over here and we can get some money and get this thing going. And that person was upset with me, that artist. And I remember being like, yeah, next, like this is if you're doing this to eat, then this is how we eat. And this year, when I listened to that song, I cried my eyes out because it was exactly what this young man was saying to me. Of put the business hat down for a second, Kyle, dude, and realize that the message here, I don't care if I make 2 cents on this song, and I guess I don't care if you make 2 cents on it, Kyle, but this could help people. You have the vehicles to put it out.
Yep.
And so my creativity, as much as I don't have walls, there were some walls I found.
Yeah.
And, and I needed it. Yep. I needed it. I was like, man, I needed that. Now, there's some, it's just, I'm writing like none other now. Like I'm like in writer's rehab. I'm trying to I can't even look at my keyboard because if I do, it's like heroin. I'm like, 8 hours later, because it's just, you can tell that humanity needs creative solution, and not in a business way, but needs it in terms of people that can put butter. Life is popcorn. Art and what we do is the butter. Same corn.
Yep.
But a little bit better.
Yep.
And so and that's hip hop.
Right.
Hip-hop. You're gonna sit here and deal with this neighborhood, this saltless, disgusting popcorn. But guess what? Put in this Dre track, and it's not that for that 3 minutes.
Right, exactly.
It's so huge what it does. And so 2020 for me, I think, business-wise, we've if we want to give some listeners some pointers, I mean, where we have really advanced and have had success is helping products and individuals, artists, everybody, because an artist is a product, quote unquote.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Helping products understand how to do that and do that more, and where to go and what to do. We've done, obviously, publishing numbers are up. People are writing more and more and more. So I'm getting hit up times. I'm up 500% in terms of people wanting new songs and new things to write to, and just energy. Management has been interesting because there's not much.
Right.
Artist has been actually one of the toughest things I think I deal
Yeah.
with day to day, because we've got young artists that we were in the middle of so much, and then COVID, and then nothing. And so, but I would say, in terms of where we have been able to do well, is it is a time to get better at what you do.
Exactly.
I've been playing, I don't even want to say, a lot of hours a day, but but it's like I'm getting so, yeah. 2020 lost a lot, but in loss comes learning, and I have learned so much more about myself and what I'm capable
Same.
of doing.
Yep.
Like, I think I would be in the same place mentally if this year didn't happen.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the whole walls thing, because I really went like putting, walls up but creatively and stuff like that, cuz I really went through something similar this year too. Nice Guy Entertainment, operated as a record label basically up until this year, and I was finding myself, because I lost access to IPR where I was operating Nice Guy Entertainment out of for like 6 years, and
Mm-hmm.
then I also I wasn't booking shows,
Right.
and that studio access and shows were like Nice Guy Entertainment's core essentially for
Right.
years. So I was left with, I had a group of 8 to 10 people who I, love and respect, but even the process of putting together a cipher track with those guys, there was a lot of miscommunication and stuff like that, and I was just finding myself stressed out more than anything over something that used to bring me tons of joy, and I used, something I loved, and I was like, I got to get back to doing me, and I got to get back to why I love creativity, and why, get that excitement back. So I called everybody, one on one, and I just said Nice Guy Entertainment has to go forward as my personal brand again. It
Yeah.
started as my idea, my personal brand before I even went to IPR, and it's kind of back at square one, but it kind of like broke down a lot of walls, a lot of mental, walls that I had, because my whole thing was, oh, I gotta work on this artist thing. Oh, I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And now it really allowed me to do things like this podcast, and talk to other creatives and stuff, and still give that sort of helping other artists out and stuff like that. But it also allowed me to get back to making beats, and even like starting to learn the piano, which I don't know, and so
Yeah.
I'm starting to kind of teach myself to play a little bit, and create sounds and record and all these different things. So it definitely was similar for me in that regard too.
You will not come with something new if you have done no growing.
Yep.
Growing requires self work.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny we're in the same spot. I've been working on myself. I mean, obviously, I've been still running a business and da da da, but I've been really working on myself and making myself a better person, and getting better at stuff. Like, I love hearing that from you, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this year's really opened doors in a lot of ways for different creative freelance jobs. I've edited people's podcasts. I've done commercial work for North Hennepin. Just different people that still need creative services. It's really allowed
Mm-hmm.
me time to do that, a lot more than I used to. So a lot more positives than negatives last year as far as my personal life goes. It's kind of healing.
It's ironic though, and I think a lot of people can say the same. At least a lot of people I know can say the same. Now, obviously, I spend a lot of my time with creative people.
Yep.
Now, I can't. I can say for people who aren't creative
Yep.
or in that lane, I see a lot more stress.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm working on a song right now for really exciting project. The It's like a national uh, Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition, and
Oh, that's
they're
amazing.
basically a group of powerful women, Native women that are working hard to find women that have just disappeared. There's no investigation when Native women disappear. And so they have this national movement of women, and it's getting, so I got the call and they're like, we need a sound. We need a song that's going to bring all of our women together. And I'm like, that's all I signed. Like, God, what a responsibility. So like it's like, I always say this to people too, my own kids. So like my kids probably can't stand me because they are going to take on this business until, I'm not handing my business to anybody else until they, and if you don't want to do this, fine. Be smart enough to still make sure this business continues while doing whatever else you want. Matter of fact, you can use money from this business to do whatever else you'd like to do. But this isn't going anywhere. And so they have to have basic stuff. Like you have to know piano, you have to know guitar, you have to know when in the commitment to being a creative, like sleeping well, exercise, all of those things. Like I've had to, like this lady was like, how are you going to write the song? This is Nicole. She's so great. She's a founder. She's a warrior. This is the woman that is out to find hundreds of thousands of women that have disappeared and every man that has done it and is not, so she has a huge following. It's picking up crazy momentum. And she asked me a really basic question. She's like, how are you going to write it? And I was like, you know what? I just have to do everything else right, and it should come. Meaning, I got to keep up on my exercise. I got to eat right. I got to give back. I got to, and I got to sit at my piano. Because I'm not sitting at the piano, then it will never come. And so she was like, wow. And that's why I'm like, that's why it costs so much. No, I'm just kidding. That's why, she's not paying me. We brought in a bunch of sponsors to cover it. But I said, this is why people know what a project like this costs, because this isn't just about sitting down. I say this to artists and creators all the time about valuing themselves. It's not just about sitting down and making this thing in these 3 minutes.
Right.
It takes a whole half a year eating right to get that song.
Yep.
So and having energy to stay up at night and be in the studio. And
absolutely.
I don't even go to the studio until I have written a song. Then the studio. So I have it's funny because I have a conflict with producers a lot and sort of like more what I call computerization. And like with education, one thing we say to students is like the studio is where you go. You've earned the studio, right? So we say to kids all the time, like in the class, like, oh, we can't wait to go to your office or go to Oak Park, go to your studio, go to and we're like, that's after you write the song.
I agree.
So like, and obviously that you've had many people show nothing written.
Oh my God, like, hate that. Just trying to freestyle their tracks, and no, dude, no. Bro, no. Like people, like artists paying me for 2 hours of like wasting my time just so they can sit there and try to freestyle their tracks, and it goes nowhere. Like no.
I know. So that's what I mean about there are still some conduits of what it takes in the discipline. So I was saying that about this project I'm working on because it's like, for me and what I say to my kids too, because I say the same thing of like, you have to be ready to receive. That's it. I think in being creative, one just has to be ready to receive. I mean, Kanye talks about it. As much as I don't like Kanye and some of the things he's done,
right?
His connection to that layer in between humanity and spirituality is undeniable. He lives there. He's there all day.
Yep.
We get to go there for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
He like has a room, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's nice because it's like you have to be ready to receive. No one Michael Jackson says this, and Ray Charles says the same thing, and they've said it in different generations, but you don't write songs. You listen.
Yep.
And the song will write itself.
I
and
agree.
I've always used that. But some people have taken it too literally, and they just think they can show up and freestyle it. It's
Yep.
like, no,
No, that's not how this
that's
works.
not what Michael Jackson meant.
It's not how we do this. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got to prepare. You got to
Yeah,
practice. You got to write. You got to prepare before you
yeah,
get to the studio.
yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up Kanye, because I it just reminded me of this story that I haven't told yet. I really haven't told anybody about this, but just the power of Kanye and just like his music in general. So when the whole pandemic stuff started,
Right.
Kanye came out with that album. I want to say it was Jesus. What was it? It wasn't Sunday Service, but it was I think it was Jesus something.
It was a
Um,
gospel.
it was a gospel album, and I liked it. I like all of Kanye's stuff in general, but um, a really powerful moment with Kanye's music that I'll never forget. So it was I'd picked up my girlfriend from the airport because she had just gone to Mexico, and it was right before things got crazy with the pandemic, and
Yeah.
it was when I really realized how crazy things were gonna get. Um, I went to the store like I always do, like after I leave my girlfriend's to get food for work in the morning, and the line was at 9 o'clock at night was just insane. And I was looking around and I'm like, what is going on? And like just this eerie, weird feeling, just like about humanity and just about everything just came over
Yeah.
me. And it was just like the weirdest because I hadn't really experienced that. I hadn't seen yet like what the pandemic was gonna become. I had just kind of been hearing about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
um then I get in my car and I was like, that was weird. But I put my phone on shuffle like I always do, and I forgot that I had the volume turned up. And I don't know if you've heard Kanye's song Jesus is Lord.
Yeah.
But it's like this powerful epic like that just started blaring. Like after I
Yeah.
just had this like weird experience and I'm like
Yeah.
I'm spiritual, I'm not religious too, but like
Yeah.
so that's like that right there like what you said about Kanye reminded me of that story of just like the 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 chills that I got and like still get when I think about that moment. And
Yeah.
it's one of those like universe music moments that like, you know, people like Kanye can do, people with that sort of I don't know. That's something.
If you look at Kanye's interviews and people ask him, because they rarely ask him about real shit. They're always trying to get at the entertainment value. But if you
Yep.
ask him, like, because people like Charlemagne the God probably, I think, does the best job with Kanye in terms of trying to, because when I see an interview with Kanye, I don't want to hear about anything else other than his creative process. That's all I want to
Yep.
hear about. So, like, how are you doing it, sir?
Right.
And like a lot of his answers are like, like what you said, like he's like, like I picture a person. I've heard him say this. I picture a person getting in their car, turning on the car, and then my song just hits him. Like I've heard him say stuff
Oh, he
like that.
said that? I didn't even know that.
So
Wow.
look it up. Look it up. Like if you just, I mean, you can't like Google Kanye saying that, but if you
Right.
just start looking at a lot of his interviews, every now and again, a good interviewer will ask him about his production. Like, what happens? Like, what is that moment? Like, what do? You turn the computer on first? Like, do you take a piss first? Like, what do you do?
Yep.
Like, what? Like, I want to know. And, he just talks about, like, I know that my music has a purpose. That's what it
Yeah.
is. It has a purpose. And that's, no one taught Kanye that. I don't think he didn't have the internet in a way that he can look and Google Quincy Jones
Right.
teaching.
Yep.
Quincy Jones talks about purpose all the time in music, but you can hear Kanye talk about it. So it's people, and Kanye is one of those that his biggest battle is just dealing with the pressure and responsibility of what he has been blessed to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard, if you know Samson in the Bible, I mean, God, this guy had to have long hair to stay strong and all the pressure. And if you cut your hair, you're going to be weak. And like Kanye wrestles with the gods
Yep.
uh, in his existing. And that's what comes out of the music. It's brilliant. It's some
I
of the
agree.
most brilliant stuff. I mean, he samples a lot, so I obviously have my challenges there. But in terms of what his vision, he is the ultimate. I mean, this is really fucked up for me to say because I would never say this. Like, in terms of a director, like he just directs those songs.
Yep.
He doesn't
Absolutely.
instrumentize all of it. He like Quincy Jones.
Well,
Like
yeah,
if you
that's the
listen,
same thing with Dre too. Dre is the same way.
right, just a
Yeah.
wonderful maestro.
Yep.
And that is ultimately the most important part of the band. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
I don't care. You can go all the way back into the beginning of music until now. The maestro is key. No maestro, no tune.
Yep.
And I don't care how many great musicians you have. And so like Kanye just transcends it for me. And but yeah, it's funny you say that story because I'm pretty sure, and I mean, you make songs, I mean, when I'm making a song, I don't, with this song for the Native women's movement, like I asked the lady, I said, "What do you want? Like, what's the biggest thing?" And she said, "I just want these women to know we have not forgotten about them. They may be still alive, they may be dead, they may be in a lake somewhere. I want them to know that we haven't forgotten and we're still fighting." And I was just like, I'm glad I know these notes because that's I gotta get the first 2 seconds of the song have to work, and but that I love it. I love it. It's what
Absolutely.
I live to. It's what I live to do. Relationships are hard. I struggle in those areas in my life. I'm always tell people like creativity is my wife,
Yep.
and I have lost a lot for it. I fought for creativity just as much as it fought for me.
Yep.
Had certain friends that I can't spend time with anymore because I spend too much time creating, and I will not give it up.
Yep.
And so
Same.
it comes along with sacrifice, and
Yep.
so like it's not all that pretty.
Yeah, really isn't.
The process, it's never what the only thing that's pretty is what you make. Everything else is like at this point in my life I can do without.
Yep.
But everything else sucks. But that end result is so worth it.
We always worry about all the in between stuff, and we always stress about the in between stuff. But
Yep.
creatives, when it comes down to it, we just create. Like when it
Yep.
comes down to like actually getting to work, we just
Yep.
figure it out. We find a way to make it work. And that like we don't. It just comes naturally. We don't feel comfortable unless we're creating.
I tell people all the time, like you have to use that as a badge to get into different rooms.
Yep.
We creatives in education. We
Yep.
need creative
Absolutely.
people in policing. We need creative people in so many areas right now. That's what I mean of like this year for me, I've actually gotten into a bunch of different lanes because people just know you as like, oh, you're creative. So that means you could be helpful in this conversation.
Yep.
You can be helpful in this way. And so like, I'm saying to creatives, there's so many lanes to use that muscle. If you can make a beat, you can solve a social problem.
Agreed.
I promise you.
Yep.
Like I promise
Yeah.
you. It's the same way of thinking. Trial and error, commitment, showing up, staying there all night.
Yep.
All of the stuff. It's not 9 to 5.
Nope.
You don't solve a problem 9 to 5.
Yep.
Like that's what I mean. Like creatives, our time is coming. The world is
Exactly.
sort of preparing itself for us, and we just got to be ready to show up and provide that idea, that sound, that whatever in that moment to make the thing go round.
I agree.
Yeah, man.
And if there's anything that you ever need help with, man, you know that I'm always
Oh
around.
yeah, Always, man. And I think just continuing to be a conduit of hip hop. Here's the thing: is that the forces and the nature that be don't want hip hop to live its true purpose
Yep.
because it destroys powerful systems.
Yep.
The stronger hip hop gets, the weaker they become.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Literally.
Like,
Yep.
literally. And so there is incentive for it to be about mistreating women, shooting each other up, and not talking about them.
Yep.
There's a reason that that's happening
Oh, I
now, as
agree.
opposed to like, come on, NBA young boy, you've been in the hood your entire life. Let's not talk about glorifying the hood. Let's talk about why there are hoods.
Yep.
You haven't, so like it's that the Dre and all them knew it. They knew it.
Oh yeah.
They talk about, you look at the old interviews with Ice Cube and those guys, they tell you like this is life or death. Y'all have no idea. Like we're out here rapping
100%.
for people will try to kill us.
Yep.
Like people are trying to kill us because we didn't want to do it, but there's a movement beginning.
Yep.
And we're at the front of it. And that stuff was so energetic to me when I was a young man. I can't even explain. It made me feel like I wasn't a piece of shit. I can't. That's the only way I can explain it. Those guys made me look in the mirror and go, "It's fine being that guy."
Mm-hmm.
Because everything else you see in the world is like, oh, you don't want to be yourself because it's just doom
Right.
everywhere you turn. And so that's why they were so powerful, is that so many of us, yourself and other just young people, were not sure who we were.
Yep.
Because the system, we were in that in between. You're in
Yep.
between being grown when your brain starts to solidify and being a child. And the system likes you to be sort of clueless in between that time. And then job, taxes, babies, wife, husband, die. Next,
Right.
then they can continue on. Hip hop interrupted that.
Oh, totally.
It just like cut that highway of misinformation. And
Absolutely.
it's speaking of whatever, keeping hip hop going, that's one thing I've always said to you. I appreciate, you may not know it, but the energy you put into keeping that thing alive is so much bigger than you know.
I appreciate
And
that.
every little ounce of gas, if you're from the hood and you know what it's like to fill up with a buck 46. So so every penny counts, in the fuel tank of our music and what we know helps people, not just our, but everybody. Every penny counts. Every little drop you put in matters, and it's collective as it was always.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so like that's just by default. Of course, if things come up, I'll bring you into them, but by default, what you're doing there and what other people are doing, and it's funny because I see more white guys preserving hip hop, and I see more of my own destroying it. It's very interesting. I mean, I'm keeping it 100 with you. Like I was having a conversation with a hip hop artist in town. I don't know if I should say his name on here, but maybe Mac Irv, who's great.
Oh yeah, he's dope. I like Mac Herb a lot.
We were talking about many things. And we're having a lot of conversations, and it's like I'm like people that have, like, we gotta protect hip hop just as much as a Brandon is, or let's support Brandon, because these are the people who protect it and can proudly wear it. Like you proudly wear hip hop, which is, and not just hip hop, but music and
Right.
true music and music that advances and elevates, not garbage. And that's that's hard. that's hard to do. It's hard to not just be about popular music. It's
Yeah.
hard to that's hard to do. I have to find that balance all the time, man. So I mean, I appreciate it, always have, always will. I know you'll never leave it because you can't.
No, I can't.
And
It's engraved in me, man.
yeah.
And I
So
and I think it comes from knowing that, like, hip hop was not created by white people. And like I think it's always been my thing, like I need to respect this. I need to know that, like, I don't know the right words to say, but I don't own this. Like, I'm a guest here. So I need to by all means, like, make sure that I'm not the only voice that's being heard. Like I need to
yeah.
make sure that, like, black voices are being heard, that women voices are being heard, and minorities in general, gay, everybody.
I got a guy I want you to have on your show. His name is Richard,
Absolutely.
and he's great, and he's pretty much who I talk to about young talent. He's the guy that's got the ear really to the ground. I'm talking about as early as 13, 12. He's the best scout you'd ever know in the Twin Cities.
Nice.
You should connect with him because he's trying right now so hard to build out facility, space, to just continue to cultivate hip hop. He just thinks that if we don't create a space, like he's like, I want to. So he has a building in St. Paul he's a part of. They've opened up all these studios. I mean, we need many. We need as many of those as we have Super Americas.
Absolutely.
And so, like, he's another person I think would be great for you to chat with and introduce to your audience, and then him introduce you to his audience, because he's with a bunch of artists all the time, and like they need to slow down and have these conversations.
Yeah.
The questions you ask about music and what it means to a person, stuff that we talked about today. I mean, like,
right.
This is what our young creatives need, because we got it inadvertently, like we got it unfacilitated, but like they're not getting it unfacilitated. They're not understanding certain things, and so like to be able to have and ask them and have these questions, I think could be very powerful. It's like there's this underground, and when George was murdered, so much talent sprouted up all of a sudden. He was like, came out of nowhere. So it's like, I don't want to miss any of it. And honestly, Brandon, here's what's happening. There is a music movement that I want to instigate. What our young people have experienced across the country, let alone in Minneapolis, which is the beginning of everything.
Right.
Right. We cannot ever, like you talk about Rodney King, that started, Minneapolis
worldwide.
Worldwide. So like our kids here began creating positive, great music about police, it was like all of a sudden my inbox of music, people sending me stuff of listen to my song, changed. It was like I'm listening to track after track that's bringing tears to my eyes, and I'm like, oh my God, our kids beat us. We're not ready. We don't have enough infrastructure to support the talent that just sprouted up. They beat us to the table. Like they're at the table waiting for those that can provide infrastructure for them to do what they do, and we're showing up barely with the shirt tucked in.
Right.
Yep. And so like there's something happening there. Richard is behind it. I want you two to connect, because I'm helping him at a bigger level in terms of making some relationship with the mayor's offices and and other things that we can get some big players to invest to. But he's on the ground with it. I really want you two to connect, because he's another one of the folks that there's a few of us left that understand what hip hop is meant for, not what it is today. You know what I mean? There's so many who consume it, and they're like, oh, but they have no idea what it is all about. They just don't know, and nor do they care, and nor should they. So what?
Right. It's different generations have different outlooks on it and add different things to it and stuff like that.
I am so critical of hip hop music. Like
Yeah.
that's more, hip hop is harder to make than jazz in 6/8 time.
I disagree. I mean,
I know
but
you do.
we come from different worlds when it comes to creativity in that aspect.
Yeah,
Like I love
yeah,
sampling. Sampling is my thing because I don't know how
yeah.
to play, you know? So
Right,
like
right,
chopping up an old
right.
record or like chopping up a
Yep,
sample, you know, but my whole thing is like it always comes down to creativity, you know,
yeah,
for me.
yeah,
And if, you know,
yeah.
that's like any sort of, you know, new artist in hip hop, whatever, like I care about what they're bringing to the table creatively, and if they're offering something new, something cool, something different.
Let me get you with Rich, and then these conversations. I'm open to them. One thing I'm open to in the future is we can get into more specifics. I love to share how I monetize creativity.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I think that's usually where I like to be most helpful with young folks. It was how I learned. I learned from some older guys that were like, dude, you're stupid. They were like, yeah, I am, but show me the way. And as
Right.
soon as they give you a little something, you're like, you take that little thing and I make a whole pot of mac and cheese with
Yep.
it. And so in the future, hold me to some of that stuff, particularly in what I think the market is about to become with less live music and how creatives can still make a living, because what will kill us is if we starve.
Right.
That's what the system counts on. We'll starve them. Then they can no longer wake people up.
Right.
Because that's our job.
Yep.
That's your job. That's my job. Like, we got to wake people up. Sometimes it's a beat, whatever it is that wakes
Absolutely.
them up, and they don't like that wake up stuff. So they'd rather see some of us shrivel up,
Yep.
and we can't let it happen. So I'm all about sharing. I don't like to. There's a few secrets I'll keep, but most of it I'll share just so I can get more.
Yep.
And I can hold me to some of those conversations in the future, and we can get into some of those
Definitely.
and give your audience, some hustle
Yeah. No
out
doubt.
there. Because if you can make something, if you can make a beat, if you can come up with it's just a hustle part.
Right. It's just
That's
the work
that's
ethic. Yep.
and then knowing where the money is.
That would be really helpful. I mean, even for me, I mean, I feel like the monetization part of this whole thing, I didn't start really understanding until this past year, to be honest. Because I mean, I was doing Nice Guy Entertainment forever, but I never figured out how to really profit from it and monetize it. Because I wasn't charging my artists. Like I was, obviously we had deals worked out and stuff like that, but I wasn't charging them to record. And we
Right.
were just hoping that like we would essentially blow up and we'd all share profits and stuff like that. And that's not the way it works. And like I had to
Yeah.
really come to like some tough truths when it comes to that stuff. So that would even be helpful for me because I mean I've kind of made my bread and butter this past year as an audio engineer and stuff like that, and not really
Yeah.
on like the royalties side of things and
Yeah.
the getting music into commercials and syncing and all that stuff. So I would love to learn more about that stuff.
Now is the time because everybody's creating content. You can almost, I'll say this. How about this? I'll give you this little tidbit, then I got to get off here.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
The want to be popping on social media for a brand is their number one driver. So you can almost cut a deal just knowing that.
Yep.
I've been able to critique a product's appearance and say, yeah, you all with this kind of sound, here's where you can go. They have no clue. As soon as you show them, the other thing that I do too is I will make it first. A lot of my competition will go to a client and say, oh, I have a vision for this product for you. And then it's going to cost this amount of money. What they don't know is that client has about 3,000 people asking them to buy a product.
Yep.
What I do is I'll just make it. So I'll just spend the money making it. So like Twin Cities Pride, for example, that song, we wrote the World Pride Anthem, essentially it became. I just wrote it first. Then I went to the Pride board meeting and played it, and it was done.
That's amazing.
And so
yep.
it's almost like you have to stay in creative, be proud of what you make, even if it's a piece of shit.
Absolutely.
Somebody will. That's the thing. There is no good and bad art.
Yep.
It's just art that sells and art that doesn't.
Yep. Facts.
I've seen the most horrible stuff sell. I'm like,
Facts.
What the hell?
Yep.
I've been into people's homes and they're like, look at this picture on the wall. And I'm like, I could have shipped that out. That's horrible. Cost $200,000.
Right.
Allowing yourself to get critique. I mean, okay, so Coors Light. We own It's So Refreshing, which is a Coors Light jingle. And I did that with Tone.
Yep.
You met Tone. I'll send you the thing. The US market didn't like it. I was like, excuse me? I was upset. I was like, this song is dope as hell.
Yeah.
and I already made it.
Right.
And it's done, and it's beautiful, and it's dope. And so they were like, not, the timing's bad. I mean, it's a cool song, but we can't do anything with it right now. And I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going to get a big deal. And
that's crazy.
So both Tone and I were bummed. We had both put energy and money into it, and it's like, oh, here's a loss. Then I said, it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
Let's pitch it. Let's pitch it to Coors Light UK. Coors Light UK loved it, so they picked it up. Then Coors Light US was like, oh yeah, great.
Wow.
And it was so funny because it's like that kind of, we were both sort of defeated. And we did a music, like a little visual with it. And Coors UK loved it. And we had branded it out. Everyone in the video was wearing Coors stuff. They were dancing it.
I saw like pictures of it, or like maybe like a video of like the making of it, but I didn't hear the actual song and see the final product.
In 2 days, it got up to like 60, 70,000. Once it breaks 30,000 views, it will show up. If you've tagged X company, it will show up. So we forced the play.
Yep.
They had no choice. We went to Coors UK, who helped us put it out, create the audience for it. Once the audience was created, we then turned back and was like, look, people are loving it and they're consuming. They're like, they saw the marketing being done. They jumped on board. So we forced it. We forced them into a position where they had to respond because the public was already loving it. And so like, it's just the hustle.
Yeah.
Now we could have, the song is probably not great. I think it is, but I was not going to let my art die.
Right.
And so that's the thing. Whoever painted that piece of shit picture is probably the best salesman you've ever talked to. Because whatever they said to get somebody to spend, this person literally said to me, Brandon, I looked at the photo, I was like, what? They were like, yeah, it was like $200K. Like my grandfather bought and it's passed down and it's appraised. I'm like, excuse me? 200 grand? I couldn't believe it. But somebody made that thing and was not about to go to bed until somebody bought it.
Yep.
And that's the difference, usually. Is like, I'm so obsessed with the things I make that it's gonna go. I'm gonna make it go. Like that's, that's the so I'm excited to share that stuff. I'll send you the Coors Light thing. You'll check it out. You might not.
Sounds
like
good.
it. It's corny. It's a jingle. I mean,
jingles, jingles are always, especially a brand like Coors Light. It's gonna be something. It's gonna be somewhat corny. There's gonna be some corn element to it. I mean, I respect your talent. I respect, your ideas and stuff. So I would love to check it out, I'm sure.
And then let's get back on soon, man. And more power to your podcast. I'm excited to be on and show some support.
Thank you so much for giving me the time, man. I really, really appreciate you joining me for this today.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Brandon.
Sounds good. Thank you.